Let's talk about my audio workflow in Final Cut 10. In 2022, it's time for an update. The old video is a bit out of date and I'm rambling along. So I try to make this quick and a bit more precise and tight. Okay, so this is a typical edit, interview, B-roll, sound effects, music, and that's it. A basic 5-minute interview edit. Nothing fancy. It's all done and I already categorized everything in roles. That is really an important step to have, like the interview, the music, sound effects, maybe even B-roll or a second interview track. Like here I have this on a different mic, but in this case I'm outdoors and I use a different microphone. This is the Rode Lavalier Mic 2 and here I use the Rode Video Mic NTG on a boom. So in the end I have to use different settings for those kind of mics and settings and setups. Anyways, so everything is set up with roles for video and audio as well. And what I do now is basically select everything and go Option G. And that way I make a compound clip. This is important and I could rename this master. So now I end up with a compound clip and now I go here, show audio lanes, and now it splits everything up in those roles. So for this tutorial I will use the Final Cut plugins, which are basically the Logic Pro plugins. They are pretty good and should work fine. First of all, I will put a limiter on the master, so to speak, on the mix track, which is this up here. So I go into levels, limiter, make sure you have true peak detection on and set it maybe to -1 because it kind of prevents from clipping as well. And you could push the gain a bit, maybe 2 or 3 dB, just so you have a bit more punch. Nothing fancy. I wouldn't go too high, but 3 dB is kind of nice to merge music and the interview a bit better together. And then for the interview, in this case, this was a quiet room, so I don't need any noise reduction. So I go with the equalizer and then a compressor as well, which is in levels. I use the compressor. There you go. And for the second one, it's basically the same, equalizer and then compressor. And also basically the same for the music track, an equalizer and levels, compressor as well. I mean, I don't want to go too deep into what settings and whatnot. This is basically just an overview. It's for every person, every microphone different anyways. So a little bit of high boost maybe. De-esser, yeah, you could use a de-esser, but also I kind of go ahead and lower this frequency also around 200, 500. This is a bit low-end mud. You can and then you can have like the 1, 2, 3K to have a bit more precise or more understandable, make the voice a bit more clear. Low cut as well, especially when you have a boomy mic or like wind or something like that is good, up to like 50 or something. I don't want to talk about too much about what is the best setting anyways, just to give you a quick understanding about settings. All right, here on the compressor, limiter should be on, maybe about 0.5 just to be safe. And then you could go with auto gain, but usually I turn it off and dial it in myself. Again, a bit longer attack and longer release, but the auto setting works fine. And yeah, I mean, push it a bit more depending on the material and stuff like that. You push it a bit more depending on how loud or silent it is. You could also push the input gain if your material is a bit low. That way you push it before it hits the compressor. Something like that. And the same would apply then for the other microphone. Yeah, you get the idea. For the music, I don't push it too hard. I make a bit more room in those 2K to 5K area to make room in the music for the voice. Nothing fancy. 4 dB is even maybe a bit too much. High end, I could push the high end a bit and something like that. Also remove a bit mud in the 200 area. And there you go. In terms of compression, I wouldn't go too much. Here as well, limiter on, make up gain off, and maybe only like 2 to 1, something like that. And yeah, don't push the compressor too much on the music, because then you might get into trouble in terms of pumping music and stuff like that. I mean, in the end, you have to use your ears to precisely tune in the settings. Usually the background noise or sound effects, I don't really go and put anything on, sometimes an equalizer or something like that, but it's fine. Maybe I reduce volume and stuff like that. Now, for this outdoor interview, I could use some noise reduction, background noise reduction, and of course there is the new isolation, the voice isolation. I could select it in this master track, but then again, it also works fine when you select it directly in your edit here. You don't have to do that in the compound clip. It works fine, maybe even better when you select individual clips, so the AI in the background can do a bit more, so it doesn't really matter. But in this case, I put it on, and yeah, there you go. That's it. That's all there is. The key is to have all the roles selected and everything set up. So you just put it in a compound clip and then use it like a master mix, a master submix, like you would when you use it in a scenario where you send out stems to your mixer. That's basically the same idea. You send them the dialogue track, the music track, and the sound effects track, and maybe Foley or whatever. And those are the stems, and you send them to a Pro Tools guy or whatever. He does use those stems to mix it down and send you the master back. And the master is in this case basically this first roll here. And there you go. Now here are the plugins that I usually use. FabFilter is basically the industry standard. Especially the limiter is really good and really nice. Push like 3 dB, something like that, depending on the footage. And then I also have it on minus 1.2, something like that. So just to be safe, that you don't have any peaks. True peak is on. But yeah, the nice thing about that is you have a scale and see, in this case, I set it here to see if my LUFS, my LUFS peak level or loudness level goes over the minus 12 or something like that for, in this case, streaming. Minus 14, that is basically for streaming like YouTube and stuff like that. A pretty good indication, and the limiter actually shows you how much you go over those limits. I mean, plus or minus 2 is alright, even 3 should be good, but everything below or over that is a bit tricky because YouTube or any other service actually will compress, so to speak, or lower the levels or push the levels, and that is not a good thing at all. Yeah, and then for my interview, I actually made a preset. I have a video about how to do presets about that, and I basically have normal interview. I put that on there. In this case, I actually use RX9 De-noiser, which still does sound a bit more natural. And in the new update, it kind of works smooth. As you can see, the waveform drawing was quick. That took a while in the older version. And then I have the FabFilter EQ3. That is a bit more demanding, especially with the waveform drawing. So as you can see, yeah. And I have like presets for different mics. In this case, I knew that it was the Video Mic NTG, and I have a preset to start and then go from there. And as you can see, I have a pretty good understanding about what is going on, and you have dynamic EQing here for de-essing and stuff like that. This is a user-friendly and really good sounding equalizer. And then there goes the de-esser. You could use the Final Cut de-esser as well, but it's fine because this one is sounding a bit better, as well as the FabFilter compressor, of course. I use the spoken word preset here, and then I optimized it for the footage or the audio quality, the audio source, and there you go. And basically I do that for all the other tracks as well. So highly recommend the FabFilter plugins, they are great. Now I could get rid of the denoiser here, especially on the outdoor track here. I would use the voice isolation on like 40 or 30%, which is fine. I have a video about this voice isolation tool as well, check that out. And yeah, this is basically it. Don't think this was any shorter, but I think it was a bit more precise than the old video. I was rambling along quite a bit there. But yeah, if you have any questions about this workflow or the settings or whatever, or have any tip or plugin I should check out, let me know in the comments. And again, thank you for watching. That's it. Good night. Back to work.